This is the examples video for the lesson on circles. Number 1 asks us to find an equation of a circle whose center is at -2, 4 and has a radius of 5. So this is very simple if you know the circle formula, or the standard form of the equation of a circle. But let's think of this more in depth. So a circle is a collection of points that's a distance r away from its center. So if I look at the distance formula, I know that my distance is always going to be 5. And, well, what I have inside has to compare certain points. Well, the distance 5 is from a point to the center. We know the center is at -2 and 4. So here I have the 4, and here I have the -2. And we're going to compare that with some generic point, xy. So I have, well, I'm going to be taking the difference also, because if I add 2 points, that's not giving me the distance. The distance formula is where you subtract 2 points, square them, and then you take the square root and you get the distance. So that means over here I have y minus 4. And over here I have x minus -2, which is just x plus 2. So this is an equation of the circle. Also, perhaps a better way of writing this is to not have the square root. And this is where we take the equation straight out of the standard form. In that case, I could just square both sides. X plus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared is equal to 5 squared, which is 25. Question 2 gives us the endpoints of a diameter and wants us to find the equation of a circle. So let's look at a circle, and remember that if we have endpoints of the diameter, we have points here and here that have the diameter. So if I get the point precisely between them, I necessarily get the center of the circle. So to find the point between these, I just take the midpoint. And the midpoint is just the average of the x values and the average of the y values. So the average of the x values, well, I just add them up and divide it by how many I have, add them up, and divide it by how many I have. And that gives me -1/2 and 2. So that's my center. Now I need to find the radius. Well, all I have to do is take the total distance and divide that by 2. So I can use the distance formula to find the distance. The distance formula says it's the square root of the difference of the points squared. So the difference of the x values is like 1 minus the -2 squared, and I've got 7 minus the -3 squared. And of course, remember, if you subtract a negative, that's just the same thing as adding the numbers. So that's the square root of 10 squared plus 3 squared. Well, 10 squared plus 3 squared is 100 plus 9, so it's the square root of 109. So now let's put everything together into the equation of a circle. So x minus the center x value, which is -1/2, gives me x plus 1/2 squared. Then I've got y minus the center y value, which is 2, squared, and that's equal to r squared. Well, r is the square root of 109 over 2, and we're squaring that. So that gives us 109 over 4, which is 27.25. For number 3, we have to find the coordinates of the center of a circle with that equation. So let's analyze this a little more. I'll separate the x values by coloring them red. So we've got an x squared minus 2x. And we've also got, for the y's, y squared plus 8y. And all of that, if I add 13, I get 0. In order to get this into my standard form, so I can really tell what the coordinates of the center are, I need to complete the square. So let's start with completing the square for x. So, negative 2 divided by 2 gives me negative 1. And if I square that, I get the extra term I need to complete the square. So, x squared minus 2x plus 1, and then I've got to get rid of that 1 that I just created. And now let's look at the y's. So I take the middle term, 8, divided by 2, which gives me a 4, and then I square it, which gives me 16. So now for the y's, I have y squared plus 8y, and I also want to add this 16, which of course means that I have to subtract the 16 and add the 13 that was there before. I can now put my x's together by using completing that square. It's going to be x minus 1. So we've got that minus that 1, plus for the y's, I have y plus 4 squared. And then I've got minus 16 plus 13 is equal to 0. So I don't even have to find out what the radius is. I could put those terms together and put them on the other side, but I already see the center clearly. Using these, I know that the center has to be at the coordinate 1 and negative 4.